Good evening and welcome to the show On the Spot. My name is Patrick Kamara. Now, as a country, we are into the season of political campaigns full throttle. Presidential candidates will be nominated on the 23rd and 24th of September 2025. And after that, the campaigns will kick in. NUP is prepared to have their rally in Nateete, while President Yoweri Museveni, as a candidate, will have his rally in Kololo. But will this election be without intimidation, without violence and bribery? What do we need to have a smooth and fair election in Uganda? That's the question we're trying to answer tonight with some of the most seasoned politicians and political analysts in the country. Let me introduce my panel this evening. I have Mr. George Musisi, who's an aspirant for Kira Municipality Member of Parliament on the National Unity Platform. George, thank you so much for joining us. Good evening.
Good evening, listeners. Good evening, Patrick, and pleasure to be here as always.
I have Mr. Joseph Otieno, who's an presidential aspirant from the Uganda People's Congress. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Otieno.
Pleasure to be here, Patrick. Always a pleasure to be with you.
I have a commissioner in the office of the president, Mr. Fred Bamwine. Thank you for joining us, Fred.
Thank you so much, Kamara. Good evening, viewers and listeners of NTV. I'm happy to be with you.
So, I know before we just got on the set, you guys were exchanging pleasantries. Everything is smooth and okay. You have a brotherly talk and it's all nice. Are we going to keep this, gentlemen, when we get into the real contestation for power, that yellow and red and blue are not going to be fighting amongst themselves, that this brotherly relation I just saw down at the lounge of NTV will continue even in the campaign field, Mr. Bamwine?
You see, Kamara, you are part of this society called Uganda. And there's what they say, what it ought to be and what it is. You cannot expect to harvest what is didn't sow. If all political actors, the candidates, the supporters, we are all preaching for peace. We are all articulating ideas, knowing that we are going to get into elections and come out with one country. Then there, you would expect that elections are going to be peaceful, and this cooperation and environment will be the same. I am one of those Ugandans who have been an active participant as a child, as an adult. And I have been closely been involved in all these elections. The biggest challenge from the time the framers of the Constitution made political offices to be the best paying jobs in the country, that's when we started losing it out. Well, you're talking about presidential. At parliamentary, it is worse. People have sold their properties. It's a do and die.
You have said this before, Mr. Bamwine, that because of the money involved in the politics, no wonder we see all the acrimony we see, because it is attracting sometimes even the social rift of all they need is money. And by the way, almost 80% of the Ugandan leaders are NRM. So you're talking about greed on your own party.
That's where you go wrong. When you invite me here, I mentioned the brutal truth about Uganda. Because if Uganda is on fire, it will not only catch the NRM people, it will catch all Ugandans.
So let me premise.
So we have a responsibility,
are you
all of us.
saying this, but also with hindsight, that the biggest percentage of the leaders today are NRM? And so if the politics is soiled and the politics is toxic, it's largely NRM.
So what did you see in NRM primaries?
Deaths.
Chaos.
Wow.
Death.
So why do you want to pretend as an ostrich? I'm talking about the politics of Uganda, and it's across board. You have said Musi is going to stand in Chira municipality on NUP ticket. And NUP and FDC and the PPF, they are all opposition groups. Why is he coming when he knows that the constituency is for opposition? Because the opposition groups want to remove NRM. Why would he come to stand against his colleague in opposition? It's no longer about leaders and parties. It's about what am I going to get in the next 5 years. Kamara, we have a responsibility to tell the country the brutal truth, and that's when we can come out better.
Are you challenging his intention or you're doubting his integrity?
I know why they are there.
Okay, he will be able to say that. He's here.
No, he will not say it. I have told you as an example.
That George Musisi's intention in Kira municipality is
against somebody in opposition. In opposition.
Nothing else but money.
In opposition. The constituency is an opposition constituency. And this opposition,
so what if it is opposition?
This opposition
so
is
what
saying,
if it is opposition? Because
this opposition
every
is,
individual, including yourself, you have a right to go.
Yes, this opposition is saying we want to remove NRM. If they were genuine, they would say, this one is what.
Has there been a coalition of opposition?
That's
they have the same ideological.
That's what they say.
They have the same ideological
That's
thing.
what they say.
Okay,
but anyway,
hold on to your point, sir. Let me come to Mr. Joseph Ochieno, because for him, he's a bit different from the rest of us and yourself, sir, because for him, he's aspiring to lead Uganda. You are a presidential aspirant, but shall we have you as a candidate, really? The time remaining is so short. You have not returned your papers. It's Thursday night. You only have to go on Tuesday to be nominated. Will you do that?
I really hope I do. And it's interesting you raised the question with my NRM friend. I think the entirety of this conversation is an indictment on NRM. These guys, without politicizing the conversation, went to the bush, allegedly because of a dissatisfaction by the claim an election which was not necessarily free and fair. Interestingly, a fantastic citizen sent me a note this evening saying that elections should not only be free, but should be about fairness and verifiable. I have sought to challenge our colleagues in NRA and indeed our friends in DP that in the last 40 years they ought to present verifiable evidence that the 1980 general elections were irregular, unfair, rigged, and that in the unlikely event that the option was the alternative, either DP or NRA, NRM, in which case UPM at the time would have won the election. They haven't presented it. But I give that contextual background because my sadness is that I don't know that since 1986 we have had a genuine commitment by the guys who are in charge today to return our country to a sense of normalcy, to a state in which we're able to have a conversation like this, as you rightly say, and by the way, it was very amicable for the three of us. And I must also say, Patrick, that wherever I go in this country, within the political circles, I tend to have very cordial conversations with friends from across the political divide. And sometimes I wonder if only it were translated into reality beyond ourselves and beyond boardrooms. And so that today is Thursday, and I have a matter in court that only does not address the question of my candidature, but addresses very critically the question of the leadership of Uganda People's Congress. Is an indictment on the political climate created.
Really, an indictment on Uganda People's Congress? Why do you have to extend it beyond UPC? You have more than 3 people, all of them claiming to be president of the party, including yourself.
In the event that this matter was judiciously dealt with 4 years ago, we wouldn't be here. In fact, in the event that this matter had been resolved in 2000, one aspect of it had been resolved in 2016-17, wouldn't be here. I am not point scoring. I am talking about the political climate. In fact, I'm building foundations for our conversation. That free and fair elections, is it possible? And what really would be the key tenets? It should be a state in which there's a culture, and my colleague seems to refer, a culture in which, and I've been arguing about this, including the rather archaic lining up within NRA, that it should be possible that in Nagongera, for a parliamentary candidate, that we assemble in St. Joseph's Primary School Hall in Nagongera.
Or Kisoko boys.
And people gather, you know, and talk, make their statements, campaign, and that Patrick Kamara, as it was particularly in UPC's case, would come from outside the constituency or perhaps outside the region. You come and supervise these things. Cut pieces of paper here in an exercise book. I've seen, I've done this in other countries. I've done this in Britain. I've done it on the Labour Party. And you tick and count. He's shaking his head. You know, this is the culture. And tick and count, and you plus 3 others come, witness, go, people sign in, count, and we have confidence in you. We have confidence in the process. The fact that that cannot happen today after 40 years is an indictment on these guys. Because 40 years ago, what I saw in 1980, as a little kid, is shocking. So the system is broken. So I hope, to answer your question, that my pending matter is resolved, not for Ochieno, not for Uganda People's Congress, indeed really for the citizens of this country and for members of UPC. That is the leadership question. But also the fact, where you're right, that members of UPC and leaders in UPC can go through an internal electoral process and somebody deliberately fudges and plays figures, and that somebody alters figures. I never knew would know and see it in Uganda People's Congress. It has arrived because of the national political culture created by NRA. But what my brother here does not say is that while it's about money, the ban on political parties from 1986 to 2005-6 created a climate of monolithic politics. And Obote warned on this in several writings, that we're going through personal merit elections, which I know is part of your preference, for a different reason. That's fair enough points being made, in which people look at me, myself, and I, individual merit, people's beauties, people's handsomeness, people's voices, people's tones, rather than substantial material that people relate. And that's the point I'm bringing as a candidate. What a UPC president, what a UPC candidate, particularly what a UPC presidential candidate will bring on the table, and I'm waiting for that. What a UPC presidential candidate will bring on the table.
Can I give information on that one?
Sure.
I think you are spot on. When we went to Chankwanzi in 2004 to receive a report from the Chiyonga report as an NPC, there was only 2 districts in Uganda, Kalangala and Kampala, which said we should go multi-party. The rest said it was not yet time to go multi-party. And in fact, they said this system of individual merit, broad-basedness, all-inclusive, non-sectarian, we should maintain it. And no wonder that now you are seeing it. People are saying, okay, what we went into was not ours. And we have been telling you, how come that in the entire Africa, people who got independence at 1962, and they have not gone through these political upheavals, and they had political parties, have not developed. It is not true that multipartism is equal to democracy. Because that one is a word coined by the whites. Political parties must be based on socio-economic foundation. Where there is no where there are no classes, you cannot have parties that are prominent, that can build the country.
So this was imposed on you?
Yes, it was an imposition from the whites. No. And of course, with these people who are choosing NRM, that they had conscripted people.
But do you remember that all of a sudden you turned around to be the champions of the same?
No, I remember my leader. He said, when he was laboring to explain, he said, you people, we are not going to leave NRM. But there are people who are saying have been conscripted in NRM. Let us allow them to go, and for us we remain. And I think that's what has come out.
So-called to be Jeko.
Yes, to be Jeko.
Patrick, in a way, that's basically the point. So in a way, and that is how shambolic and tragic it is. And I hope that the leadership of NRM over the next 10 years come to realize the impact they've created and take responsibility in a way. But I don't want us to focus too much on these guys, but just to explain that this competitive polity, which it should be today, and that's why I was referring to a UPC candidate, where UPC presents ideas, programs, you know, and there is a competition of ideas between candidates within UPC. Generally, the electorate will be driven by what they often table. But at a national level, where the mess exists, you know, is the fact that, look, we should be focusing on education. We should be focusing on health. We should be focusing on infrastructure. We should be focusing on corruption and hold people to account. We should be focusing on the crude Kira Road. We should be focusing
but that would
on
be possible if we had a higher civic competence amongst the people.
We did have it in 1980.
Okay.
No, Patrick, it's important. In 1980, I joined Uganda People's Congress as a student of Busoga College, Miri, and I had the capacity to listen to Museveni, to listen to Paul Semugere, to listen to Milton Obote, make the judgment, take the position. My view is that the position.
Okay,
I'll make this point.
Hold on.
My view
you've made your
is
point,
that what it was then is much more urgently required today, not only for Uganda, but for this continent. That is something that has not been allowed.
Let me come to you, Mr. George Musisi. You are a human rights lawyer, human rights defender. You've been very busy in the last couple of years trying to defend, especially the Noob supporters. I have seen you in court almost every week. And now the presidential aspirant is going to be a presidential candidate, I suppose, come Tuesday, and you have a rally, I'm told, in
two rallies.
One in
Katwe
and Nateete. Knowing how things are, pardon my language, are your supporters tightening their butts because there's going to be kiboko?
Well, Patrick, thank you. First of all, let me begin by clearing the environment which was fouled by Mr. Bamwini when he said that Uganda is not a one-party or a dual-party state. A dual party is where there are two strong parties that one have to compete against the other. Actually, if I'm to take his argument by extension, that why is one opposition group going for another, I would ask that why is NRM organized primaries in Chiruhura, where it has been winning? You should let one person be the candidate flag bearer for years. Because you say, why is NRM having internal primaries in Chiruhura where it's winning? Why do you replace that is the absurd version of the argument. Well, Patrick, you talk about our supporters tightening their belts, which is of course sad, that people should be looking at an election as a battlefield. One of the delusions we have as a country is to imagine that when we go into an election, we are going to compete with a political party. NRM looks at elections as a military operation. And NRM doesn't go into elections as a party competing with other parties. It goes in as a state. That's why you find that it's sometimes the army against the citizens, it's even civil servants sometimes campaigning for NRM. You find DSOs, GISOs, who are actually supposed to be non-partisan security operatives operating as state functionaries. Many times people have this argument that why do you go into elections when you think that they are mad by all these issues? Because some of the problems are recurrent, especially the issue of involvement of security in elections. In fact, we even have, even in their own internal primaries, you saw a death in Remiaga, which was caused by soldiers supporting one candidate against the other in their own internal primaries. And there were similar utterances across by many of the losing candidates that this DPC helped or another one, this RDC. In one of the, I saw on NTV, the RDC was mediating to NRM parties. I think it was somewhere in the east. So it's even exacerbated when it comes to competing with other groups in the national elections. So they look at this as a national election. Now the question always is, what should the country do? Because there are people who say, and I see those sentiments every day, that by you participating, opposition participating, you're legitimizing. Boycotts work where you have the capacity to stop the election. It doesn't happen where, you remember in 2005 that Mr. Bamun was referring to, the 2004-2005 referendum in two parties, where major parties boycotted, and NRM organized its own opposition in Mr. Nelson Ochegere, who is now an ambassador, to create a semblance.
That was an NRM?
Of course.
Including Noop.
Noop was not part of that group in 2005. So it shouldn't be, sadly, when we talk about our supporters tightening their belts, it shouldn't be this. We shouldn't be talking about violence, because I'm sure you're talking about violence. Sadly, it may happen because we're already seeing semblances. We are already seeing security forces bringing their dirty tentacles into the elections, try to manage the elections. And that is one of the problems. And when the NRA government, and that is what Mr. Chen was referring to, decided to go, the NRA army, decided to go to the bush, one of the things they're contesting is that the government in place had failed to organize credible elections. Today, at the Uganda Law Society, we are marking the inaugural Samson Kalega Njuba lecture. And I want to quote the words of the Minister of Internal Affairs. He said that we should not hide our heads in the sun, we people in government. Some of the things I witnessed and I mean are recurring, and we should speak about them. If you are by extension, because I mean did organize elections. Now, if you by extension, our law puts in place free and fair elections as the minimum standard, And some of the issues that are causing us problems have been recurrent. Actually, I don't want to agree with Mr. Bamwine that the problem is multipartism. The problem is not multipartism. Even when they were under this delusion of broad-based individual merit, you know that the 2000 elections were not held under multipartism. They were very violent. That was the election of Kalangal Action Plan, where over 100 people were killed, as per the Human Rights Watch report. In the CA, apparently they were already trying to talk about movement caucus, and I remember in one of the books, Dr. Message asked Mr. Serwanga, why are we having a movement caucus when we are all under the movement? So the question is not about multipartism. The question is about people who still have a military mindset trying to operate with a semblance of democracy. That is why they look at every election as a military operation.
Okay, that's very serious, Abamwine. Before we take a break, you are getting into an election with a military mind, and you just want to assume that this is a democracy. It doesn't work that way.
No, you've seen pictures of people on an army truck wearing yellow.
Before we take a break, Mr. Wini.
I want to thank my colleagues for their analysis. But there is this singer in Uganda who sang a song called Abatasigansigo, Balinza Makungula. Those who did not plant seeds and they're expecting to harvest. If you are a political actor, either as a person, an individual, or as a group, if you posture yourself that death come what may, you must be there. Like in Uganda, you know, driving is, we keep left. There are some people say, me, I'm driving, even in the right.
But this happens
and the police is saying, please, it's true if the vehicle is yours. But here we keep left. Why there is always security forces or government agencies is to regulate. It is true, people, you are in elections, you want to, but there are other Ugandans who are in other activities. So in a situation where you have political actors building radicalism in their supporters, there is no sane government in the world that can fold its hands.
Mr. Freddie Bagwene, Mr. Joseph Ochieng, and George Mugisha. Gentlemen, we're going to take George Musisi.
Which Mugisha is
He was a football captain in my village. He was very good. Gentlemen, we're going to take a break, and on the spot, we'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. My guest this evening, I have Mr. George Musisi, who's the aspirant MP for Kira Municipality in the National Unity Platform Party. We have Mr. Joseph Ochieng, who's the, gentleman. Okay, who's an aspirant.
Even Joseph is an aspirant. It's on the NRM where they don't allow
not yet giving out tickets.
It's on the NRM where aspirants are not allowed.
It's not bad manners. Let us talk. Mr. Joseph Ochieng is a presidential aspirant and office of the President of Commissioner Bamwini. You know, Commissioner, in this whole game of democracy that we have 30 people who have returned, I think, the nomination forms. And if all goes well, they will be nominated on Tuesday and Wednesday. And if it goes according to plan, we're likely to have even 40 presidential candidates. Ours is not going to be a ballot paper, it will be a ballot booklet of sorts. Is this because there's so much democracy that everybody is having a go at it?
No, I think, I was discussing it with my colleagues. I think in Uganda we are in a catch-22 situation. We have 4 categories of people in Uganda. You have the voters, the innocent people, the voters. Then you have the government, NRM in the government. Then you have a group of people whom I call opposition to remove government. Then you have some of us who think that these things are not working well for Uganda, who still believe in the movement system of governance. We are also still here. Now, I was asking them, a voter who wanted to remove NRM and President Yoweri Museveni, when he sees the fights within parties, does he get interested? For instance, NRM and President Museveni, they have said their biggest preoccupation is household income, job creation, completely fighting corruption, on top of other government programs. So what new thing these other groups which want to remove him and president and government, what new thing are they bringing on the table? Because to remove NRM and President Museveni, you must have a superior idea from what is prevailing. With
all respect, Mr. Wamwene, that's sounding very arrogant. You think you have the monopoly, the exclusiveness of proposing something good for you?
That's what I'm saying.
Only you, and absolutely you
I'm talking
can
about,
do that?
I'm talking about the voters. They must be there waiting to see, okay, President Museveni is saying every person must have something to do to get some income. Every family must have some income. Corruption has become so rampant, it must be our preoccupation now. Because this office I have now has helped me to travel the whole country. A voter in Uganda.
But you see, you can also say as NRM, we have failed in the battle against corruption. It was point number 7 on the 10-point program when we came to power 40 years ago.
You see,
do you need more 40
Mr.
years?
Kamara,
do you need more 40 years to be able to?
Yes, Mr. Kamara, what you are forgetting is that we are building systems, they were not there. But now we are talking about corruption. We are talking about corruption in the State House. We are talking about corruption which was not there. We are talking of the IGG which was not there. We are talking about independence of DPP which was not there.
It has
these systems have now been built. It has
gone so close to
so
the
what is remaining now?
It has gone so close to the fountain of honor,
yes,
that the president himself said people around him are even taking money.
Are they not Ugandans?
That's where it has reached.
Yes.
To the highest level.
But President Museveni does not work with angels. He picks them from you. 2016 after elections, he met parliamentary caucus. No, he met parliament, this opening parliament. Said, you people have just been voted. Help me to bring a law which does not allow rapists, corrupt people, and murderers not to get bail. Do you know what the people in opposition, what they said? This man is bringing, this law is targeting us. And I asked myself, are they the rapists? And then the next group, the whites said, that law is those are outdated. So fighting corruption in a democracy, it's not easy. Not until we have all agreed that it is time now.
I know you digressed a bit because I asked about the question. And I'm going to take it to Mr. Joseph Ochieno. Your time is done for now. Mr. Joseph Ochieno, yourself, you're an aspirant. We now have 30 people who have returned the forms. Yourself, you are yet to. And if you do, and other colleagues, perhaps you'll be 40 or 50 of you, all of you want to be presidents of Uganda. What's going on?
No, that's an important question. I was speaking to a lady candidate earlier.
A lady aspirant.
Yeah, a lady aspirant. Could arguably say candidate too, but if it is a particular political organization. And part of the issue was mobilization, logistical mobilization of signatures. Not that she didn't have the signatures, but in part because of the mindset of people. And we're wondering whether or not the criteria is possibly not too rigid. In your opinion, you thought maybe you might make it slightly much more rigid. I think the number of people who went to pick nomination forms was bigger because the office of the presidency has been now reduced to, I don't want to use strong words, to spaces where people go for school fees. And if that is the case, and for me, I had to go to Mwiri and I did not have to pay school fees because my local government had catered for it, thankfully. I had won a scholarship. And so my father didn't need to do so. Then if State House is a place for school fees, then you can sort of see what we're talking about. And if part of this is for a president to hold envelopes. I was old enough as a young student in the 80s. I did not see a minister with an envelope. I did not see a member of parliament with an envelope. Milton Obote was never seen signing a check. In 2002, just as we were preparing for return to multipartism, he told me at his balcony that tries as president, no close member of his family was allowed to have a bank account abroad. No close member of his family was allowed to have a bank account abroad. I am contextualizing this and then fast forward. This is somebody who governed at independence for 8 years, governed after Idi Amin for 4 years. Even under Idi Amin, we had all these extremes. You didn't see what was happening. This guy is 40 years, and we're talking about building institutions around the Inspectorate of Government. Look, Ugandans are tired. In certain sections, Ugandans don't know anything else. 3 presidential candidates have offered to support me, but I can't speak on their behalf, including one person whom I found on the day when 2 people actually whom I went to find when I found them picking nomination forms. If you look at the grievances of some of these young people, they have no clue why they're so stuck, why their country is so stuck, where they cannot consider the presidency to ministerial positions, to legislators, and indeed to public servants, meaning civil servants in their country, when you talk about underlying issues. People are doing that because the office is almost like a mini joke at the moment. And yet at the extreme, if it's also the space where Fred was talking about, but now in politics is where there is money, then of course, yes, everybody wants to go to State House and mobilize billions and get it for nothing, and get trillions and get it for nothing, because in any case, they see how dead public services are and absent in Tororo, how dead they are possibly in the outskirts of Atiak, and how dead they are in the outskirts of Tungamu. I think the only way to narrow this is to return polity to the conversation I was having before I was, my colleague came in earlier. Politics of issues. Really, global politics is around competition of ideas, ideological drives, where you have politics to the left and politics to the right. And if you narrowed it to that, you'll realize that political parties predominantly are the key players in this. And then by the time independence begin to come, you'll find the center so reasonably crowded that people whose opinion about taxation are 1 or 2, 3 parties. People whose opinion about big government are 1 or 2 parties. And in this case, you find 2, 3 parties compete on the basis of evidence what they have. It kills politics of money, it kills politics of personalities, it brings in politics of competition of ideas. And as you rightly talk about it, if you talk about corruption, you hold these NRA friends of ours to account. If you talk about public services, you scrutinize that a UPC government would reduce, for example, presidential expenses by 90%, and you will still have a fleet far higher than what Milton Obote's did have. And you know what reducing presidential expenditure by 90% would do in public services, including hospitals and schools across this country.
Hold on to your point. Let me come to you, Mr. George. Mr. George Musisi. You know, you have an advantage because NUP is largely run by young people. And this country is 60% of 70 young people. You have a demographic advantage to take off, to use. Have you been able to court the young people, to be able to instill in them your ideals so that if they decide to go one way, then it's game over for everybody else?
Of course, despite even the hurdles, we've been trying to do that. You know that even this week, one of the leader of our department, the department which inculcates exactly that, we have a department which is meant to inculcate those kind of values in the young people especially, was charged in court for allegedly operating a school without a license. Never mind that the Political Parties and Organizations Act allow political parties to train their membership into their ideology and so on and so forth. So it goes back to what I was telling you, that this is not a problem of how parties should operate. It's a problem of the people in government looking at trying to create a semblance of a one-party state. Yet we are, despite what the law says. Mr. Bamine says that, you know, you can't fight corruption in democracy. Anyone listening to him and myself and Ocheno, we are laughing. I don't know why you're not laughing, because it's hilarious if it was not sad.
I don't laugh at my guests.
Okay.
That's why I also keep quiet.
I didn't intend you to laugh at Bamwin. I intended to laugh at what he's saying. Just the last couple of days, the ombudsman, the IGG, interdicted, I think, a senior government official. And you saw a letter from the president telling the ombudsman that where do you get powers to interdict presidential appointees without my... But we all know that actually the intention of the office of the ombudsman world over, including in our laws, is to be independent, actually to act even on presidential appointees. That is the second time we have seen that kind of open interference in the work of the IGG from the president. The president at one time said, why are you questioning UPDF officers? And of course, IGG being, because everyone is captive of the imperial presidency that we have now created, IGG recoiled, and I think she no longer, the office no longer looks at those kind of offices. Never mind that the law gives them the powers. So it's never a question of the law. And if you're talking about that, you know, the NRM government is going to fight corruption, that is the hilarious bit, that no one, of course, in their sane minds, could think that NRM can be serious about fighting corruption. It's actually a method of work. It's one of their work methods. It's one of their the cornerstones on which they are standing. So if you're looking at, if you're talking about inculcating in the young people, one of the biggest problems we have, Patrick, is our constitution would be making 30 years this year. However, we are still looking at basics. In fact, if anything, we have made several strides backwards. Daily Monitor is running a series serializing the constitution, and the other day, so the Minister of Justice saying our constitution is mutilated. It's just a shadow of itself, in an interview which ran this week. So if you look, any group you want to focus, a party wants to focus on maybe inculcating on these kind of values in this group, but we're looking at basics. Parties are not even allowed to do basics. That's why I'm saying that we are in a mixed kind of governance where you want to operate as parties, but in a dictatorship. That is one of the
So Mr. Wamwine, if you can hear the submission here, our constitution has been mutilated beyond recognition.
As per the words of the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs.
Has been mutilated beyond recognition. And so those are democratic reversals. We're not moving forward, are we?
Mr. Kamara,
we're regressing.
Mr. Kamara, I think the challenge we have, and I posed the question here, NRM has mentioned 4 core areas they are talking about now: job creation, household income, total fighting corruption, and patriotism. And I was posing a question: what are those superior ideas better than these they are putting on the table? Fortunately, my colleagues, none of them brought a new one.
So you have you have really capitalized on the border economy. I have a lot of respect for those boys because they have no jobs. Not that because there's so much love border and the young girls whom you're exporting for to be made in Saudi Arabia.
So you posed the question about democratic dividend if NUP was serious. I think you are confusing up 2 things: biology and ideology. Those are 2 different issues. You can have a 90-year person superb as a 30-year-old person. You can have a 30-year-old person superb better than.
Well, I think the young people know that the NRM has been around for 40 years, and they have said
no. The evidence is here.
People are tired.
No. The evidence is here. We have just finished electing youth councils. From the village, youth council, national youth councils, up to the district. They have not elected the national. You ask him how they have fared. In the entire country. Because the way you measure political strength is out of elections. So if the young people are tired, how come they voted their colleagues who subscribed to NRM? In the entire country. 85% they have voted NRM. So that your argument is not correct. 2, I was raising it, even I want to raise it now. A voter, like in Kamocha, where I grew up from, in Chifumbira, who belonged to DP, who support NUP, who support FDC, who support UPC, who support NRM. What does this voter want? What kind of message comes from these different political groupings? Because at the end of the day, the majority of the voters will be the one to decide.
So you are saying you are carrying the day, or you have been carrying the day because you have a better message and persuasive power?
A better message that gives hope. And if you cannot do that in an election, then you have no business.
Mr. Cheno, messaging and persuasive power was, in most cases back in the day, exclusivity of the Uganda People's Congress. Where did you drop it?
No, it wasn't. And that's what I said at the beginning. And
which UPC you are talking about? There are 4.
Do you know
there are 4 UPCs.
Let him make his case.
Please allow me to make the submission because it's really important, and I gave you some space, Machale. Look, I genuinely get frustrated in these conversations. Patrick, I've been around-ish. Yeah. I grew up in a means time in primary school. I had fantastic secondary education up to the university in this country. And in fact, I was at Kampala when the NRA guys were here in the bush. Sometimes I get very frustrated when we come into this kind of spaces and sort of like we want to fudge conversations. Look, I was attempting, and I was hoping Fred would move with me, that we need to build on politics of ideology. But here he's talking about what he's calling ideology, he's calling program of NRA. No wonder these guys, when you talk about ideology, they call themselves multi-ideological. You go to Google, basically, you don't have to look for a dictionary. It will tell you what multi-ideological is, because I generally don't know what it is. Look, the killing of civics, civic education, civics basically, in schools, the thing that at the earliest understanding of governance the role of government and the governed. The idea that public services are a responsibility of who, how you deliver that, are some of the things which are lacking. That's why I told at the beginning that killing political parties and banning political parties has done huge amount of harm in this country for the first 20 years of NRA. In the last 20 years, they've done such a terrible job of being very terribly bad winners. That hasn't worked. I am hoping that this country needs a reset. And that current reset that we should have really post, hopefully 2026, is a leadership whoever emerges, that we're able to regroup as citizens of this country, create enabling environments, particularly for the 80% who are the young citizens of this country, to be able to revisit the little bit of what the Ochenos did see, but with a focus of the future. You were talking about youth for my colleague here in NUP. As a matter of interest, actually, when I was trying to labor on the ideological element of polity, that actually young people, and predominantly young people and women, really tend to like the broader social issues, which would normally take them to the political parties of the left. And that's why, for example, in America, I've argued that the most popular politician to the left is Bernie Sanders. In Britain, the most popular leftist politician is my friend Jeremy Corbyn. And interestingly, they're predominantly backed by women and young people. Why? Because the issues that affect young people, that my colleagues here have fundamentally fudged, and that really maybe their children may have to apologize for in future, is that these guys killed educational services. Because talk about issues. We offered fundamental education that enabled this country, killed educational systems, killed public health, killed transportation, killed Kampala. Kampala at the moment is the most heavily polluted capital city in the world. You know, killed our train services, killed our buses, killed our banks, killed our industries. You know, right now we are suffering with the environment in a new and terrible world. And guess what? I live in a relatively exclusive part of Kampala. But in the last 5 days, 3 evenings, no power. And I said, what mess after 40 years? Those are the basic issues. You know, as I said, I was trying to talk about basic roads down here in Chira. You know, if you those are the fundamental issues. And now those fundamental issues should be determined by political parties and their priorities. Go into the budget rounds and say, what are your priorities? Have conversations. See which political party is focused on, is committed to what, and that is how what has gone. That's actually how I latched onto UPC at the time. Yes.
George, you as an aspirant, but really, do the political parties in Uganda, including yours, National Unity Platform, grounded in some kind of ideology that this is our brand of politics, this is our view, this is how we want to take Uganda? Or people really, are they NRM or UPC? Do they have any ideology they are grounded in?
We do. As UPC, we do.
Do you?
Well, I find that word one of the most overrated word in the circumstances that we operate in. Whereas political parties are supposed to represent some bit of ideology or semblance of where they aspire for. Ideology is like a DNA which drives any polity.
Yeah, so why do you think it's overrated, yet you need it?
I'm making my point. The challenge you have in Uganda today, and Joseph tries to make that point only that he doesn't conclude it, maybe you cut him off, that it's very hard to talk about ideology when people are struggling for basics. And I'm not talking about basics even of needs. I'm talking about that this is one thing that is envisaged. Our laws envisage parties to operate, parties to recruit, parties to mobilize, and then even inculcate their ideologies. Here, you are talking about a party struggling even to open a branch, saying that you cannot even mobilize, you cannot even have a mobilization tour. So it's one thing to have this on paper. It's the other thing that are your members attracted to the party because of that, those who are there. Of course, because of the warped nature of our politics, it has made people, some people, even leaders sometimes, go there for different groupings for convenience. If you talk about NRM, there's nothing that it represents as an ideology. many of the people, what you call NRM, is just a shell which is glued together by the bread. Right. That is why you see people who are beaten during primaries, and you ask them, why don't you abandon? You saw how their vice presidents, where chairmen were describing it in Kololo. That how did we get here? How did we get to selling? All of them lamenting. But the question is, everyone knows how it got there. You know, they have always said NOP sells cards. In Kololo, they were selling human beings at a price. All their vice chairmen were lamenting, from Mr. Vario Munsi to Madam Kadaga to Honorable Mukola. They were all lamenting, how did we get here? Right. So even in, to answer your question in just 30 seconds, whereas parties may have that semblance of where they want to go, and the question is, have the members been given a chance? No, they are not, because members gravitate towards parties, most of them, because of the convenience of the day.
George, Joseph, and Fred, gentlemen, we're going to take a break on the spot. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On The Spot. My name is Patrick Amar. My guest tonight, I have Mr. Fred Wamwine, Mr. Joseph Ocheino, and Mr. George Musisi. And we're looking at the democracy in Uganda. Are we taking democratic reversals, or you're stepping forward? If you ask Mr. Fred Wamwine, we are moving forward. To some people, we're stagnant. To others, we're actually having reversals. But what do you think, you as a viewer? I'm going to be opening the line shortly so that you too, as a Ugandan, wherever you are, you can have your say. You'll see the numbers on the screen. You pick your phone, you call us, and keep it very short. Just in case you disagree with the gentleman on this show, that's very okay. But remember to disagree with respect, because that's part of democracy that we're trying to build as a country. So Mr. George Musisi, you know, what
I thought he had finished his
submission. No, the moderator has decided. You know, NRM wants to take every space.
Mr. George Musisi, what is interesting is that on Monday, on Tuesday and Wednesday, we're going to have presidential candidates. It's going to be a monumental challenge for you in the opposition, because before you even look at NRM to contest with them for power, you have internal issues to deal with. Really, your biggest hurdles are more internal than even NRM before you even step out.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Every political organization ought to have internal contestations. That is healthy and normal. The key issue is how you go beyond those contestations to look at the bigger goal. I don't think there are any bigger contestations than what we saw in the other day, the election of SEC, where vice chairmen were crying, all of them, one of them pulled out. However, like I've said, the issue is how do you go beyond those contestations. I don't think that there is any party that has failed to go beyond the internal contradictions. In any case, if you have one party, like we have one where you have a monolithic way of looking at things, then you know that there's a huge problem.
You know, when your candidate goes to the Masaka region for campaigns, he's not going to be received by a Matthias Mpuga as a political heavyweight in Masaka as a supporter. You're going to be finding a Matthias Mpuga who's created some kind of a firewall that you are not able to penetrate as easily as you would.
No, but
when you or even Dr. Bet Bwanika or any other person, it's going to be different.
Well, the individuals you mentioned belong to different political groupings. It's not mandatory for them to receive our presidential candidate. They belong to different political grouping, and he will be received by other leaders of his party and other people who wish to receive him. The point is, will he be received? He will be, because there are many NUP supporters in Masaka. The issue is, if people have left NUP, like they have left, they have left other groupings, and like some have joined NUP, that should also be healthy. It shouldn't be seen as because every party has lost people to move in another direction. So I don't think that people who have left, even Kagabo left, honorable, and there are others who joined as well. So for me, I don't look at these exits and inroads as an interest in itself. The question is, there is a law in place. The law is supposed to operate, and anyone who breaches the law should be facing a uniform in terms of enforcement. What we're having a problem with is, one, law enforcement. People are supposed to be ordinarily neutral, being partisan in terms of enforcement of their law, and sometimes looking the other way when others are breaking the law. So that is the biggest challenge. The question should be that political players should be able to contest, should be able to fight, and I'm not saying fighting physically, should be able to play in the field without necessarily having one side having an advantage over the other. That should be the issue.
You know, Joseph Acheno, with all respect, you get into this election, your political legs are like having political shackles because of the contestation you have amongst yourself and the conflicts. So you cannot even start to walk or even run against the NRM because of the shackles you have. It's an embarrassment on one of the oldest parties in Uganda.
No, we are the oldest political party. The mess in UPC is completely unacceptable. I told people, I think even your program a few years ago, that, and I advise younger members of UPC, and there are many, by the way, that do not pretend that we do not have internal contradictions, and do not pretend that we do not have factions. The only things that I've said is that I don't belong to any faction in UPC. Quite clearly, there are factions. I think they're now adding to a mini 3, but I don't belong to any because I'm too big for factions. I represent Uganda's People's Congress, mainstream in terms of where it is constitutionally. But that said, there has also been a clear internal challenges. We've had a sense of impunity inside the party. I have fought it, I fight it, and I'll fight it. And a sense of entitlement. We reject that, and I'll reject it, and we'll fight it. In Uganda People's Congress, as we see it in NRA that they present nationally, we need to fight that. But finally, in terms of leadership, I have sensed that some of my colleagues are possibly slightly much more trained towards self-interest rather than the broader picture of this political party and the job this party has in remainstreaming this country to go forward to deliver for the citizens of this country across the political divide as per our independence commitment to the citizens of this country. So yes, internally we have that. But that said, elements of this have been interferences by our friends, possibly trainee pluralists, you know, and I think there should be shame on them. But then finally, I think on the question that you suggest in a nuanced way, we've had issues quite clearly where I think partly because of budgetary challenges, we have trillions that sunk in corruption, and we have a few others that go to fund certain luxuries in certain ministries, including classified funds. And I don't think we have had sufficient resources to education, health, the policing, and in this case, possibly the judiciary. The judiciary is generally overwhelmed. They've done rather well more recently, generally, but I don't think it's good enough because I don't know what other explanation it would be that a matter like in ours, which is a matter of a judicial review, should take 4 years. So if that had been resolved, we would not be where we are. So from that perspective, yes, and that is the problem. And those are the problems, and whoever is responsible must take responsibility. But I really hope there's no single individual in Uganda or groups of individuals who are playing on the question of leadership of UPC and thinking that they're getting away with it because my Obana Jesus is watching from ahead. But that said, in the likely event that this matter is resolved, by the more than any other political party in this country, we are soundly socio-democratic and ideologically impinged. We are the political party with a track record, and those some of them are actually a cling of our heads and in our notebooks. We are the political party that are very clear on really our national priorities as a country. So really, if we came up resolved on Tuesday or Wednesday as a candidate, and that's a candidate to Chendo, in terms of messaging for the people of this country, as I was saying at the beginning, I'll be very delighted to be on a panel with Mr. Museveni and any other candidate going across this country, and trust me, a critical majority of these people, citizens of this country, particularly the young people who've been denied the opportunities and possibilities that we had, we should be able to persuade them on issues that the future is better in the hands of Uganda People's Congress in terms of the key areas of education, health infrastructure, agriculture, and jobs. The privileges that the likes of the people in government today enjoyed for nothing that they've been denied in the last 40 years. And that many young people will be concerned that not only do they suffer to to go to schools, but that when they come out of those places, the jobs are for, technical, who you know. Those will be killed by Uganda Post Congress, and we have evidence that twice in government, none of those things happened. In fact, Mr. Museveni, I keep on repeating, Mr. Museveni would not have afforded entire school, and Mr. Museveni would not possibly have worked in the president's office because nobody knew him. But that is the fairness, the space that we created. We created that 50, 60 years ago. We should be able to do so better going forward in the future.
So I can see Fred smiling, listening to the wordsmith, Mr. Cheno, the man with the gift of the gab, which is most exclusive in most cases for the people of Uganda People's Congress. There's a way how the brother, the UPC, they have a way how to put it on the top, and sometimes I'm told you're very reluctant to debate them because
what is that?
They are very reluctant to debate you in some cases because you come out with the numbers.
I generally look forward to receiving them soon.
But Mr. Fred, if Mr. Cheno is on the ballot, maybe his group, let's look at these regions, assuming, and it's an assumption I'm making, Mr. Jimmy Akena perhaps, or him takes Lang, or if it is Mr. Cheno and takes Eastern Uganda.
You're forgetting when we mention Akena, he gets annoyed.
And Nandala Mafabi takes Masabaland, and Robert Chagulanyi takes Central Uganda. This time around, you may not get 50 plus 1.
Mr. Kamara, I was getting worried.
That's what?
Because my colleagues go 2 rounds of submission. So I was thinking that maybe it's 3 against 1.
Take my extra minute.
Because others I may forgive them, but at least not to UPC. Yes. 1986.
Wow.
We had 60 megawatts of power. Today we are talking about 2,500 megawatts. I don't know whether 60 and 2,500, those who did mathematics can help us, the viewers. By 1986, for you to have a wedding and expect to have a soda, you had to go to a minister of supplies called Dr. Moses Apiriga to give you a cheat so that you can have a soda on your party. Those who are taking alcohol, they used to take a beer called White Cup from Nairobi. I don't know how many beers we get from Nairobi now. When we talk of beverages, soda, anything, essential commodities, to the extent that NRM came, they had to do rationing. Not everybody was allowed to take a kilo. I don't know where you will go now if you want any essential commodity. Where Makerere University was admitting 500 students, government university. Today, we have 20,000 students on a government sponsorship. I don't know whether 520,000 are the same, but with 14 government universities.
Is there a country in the world which has less enrollment than it had?
No, I'm trying to help the listeners to know what was happening then.
It was Patrick's fault.
And now.
You played figures, credit to Uganda People's Congress.
By 1986, we were 12 million because children were dying of the 6 killers.
Is there a country which has less?
If you can pause there, Mr. Bamwine. You know, this is an example.
Even Somalia.
Be comfortable.
Mr. Bamwine, it's like saying,
yes,
in 1986,
yes,
we were traveling from Kampala to Jinja.
Yes.
In 1996, they were just reached Banda.
Yes.
But in 40 years later, we are now in Kireka.
By the way, even the 40 years
where we ought to be.
Even the 40 years you're talking about, it's not accidental, it's by design.
Of course that we know, I think you're right.
UPC could not hold government for 5 years. It couldn't.
Imagine that argument.
This is the first government in Uganda that has managed 72,000 villages of Uganda to be in the hands of government of Uganda. Uganda now, you can be in exile for leisure, self-imposed exile. Every Ugandan has the right to come to his country and express his will to be here. Half of Western Nile people are in exile. intellectuals, how many were in this country? So other groups can speak, but not UPC.
Okay. Yes.
You said these 40 years, the journey, I mean the speed, you mentioned the speed. You are right and wrong. Because total war ended in 2008. So from 2008 to date, how many years are those? The rest of the year, NRM has fought 28 insurgents. Although they are still outside there, but at least since 2008, it is when the government is breathing. And the people who are sponsoring those insurgents, some of them are in this studio.
Are you referring to Patrick?
No, I said some of them. Some of them, so it depends.
So,
No, that's a serious allegation.
That's a serious allegation.
Just because of air. Patrick, I better say this.
Yes.
Because of air, I said I contributed to the campaigns to compel NRA to return to pluralism, which I did.
So
I had a diplomatic operation here.
now.
No, but I think we're being very simplistic.
You're not sponsoring insurgency.
No, we're being very simplistic. And finally, and I also have to say this, by the way, and Fred, maybe you don't.
But I kept quiet.
No, maybe you don't.
When we are submitting,
no, I need to say this.
Okay.
I kept quiet.
No.
Joseph,
Look,
yes.
I was a net contributor to compelling NRA and LRA to talk. I was. And partly by persuading NRA's friends to recognize that the butcher of our people in northern Uganda was unsustainable. That is the context of some of these things. And so, in any case, anyway, these guys have been in power from 1986 to 2008. Yeah? That is how many years? That is 12 years. Fighting wars of insurgents in northern Uganda. And the chest thump
not only
that they brought peace in this
not
country.
Only northern.
And 12 years is 2 terms of Uganda Post-Congress bringing development, meaning making it possible that for 80% of the guys in this guy's administration to have gone to the school. You know, that under the current arrangement, they would not have gone.
There was a gentleman called John Pombe Magufuli. In 5 years,
yes,
he was able to do so much for Tanzania that you can see. And yet in 40 years,
but now,
not even compare.
Kamara, we are making a very big mistake.
No.
Because Pombe Magufuli did not get an opportunity to serve for the second term. You never know what could have happened.
You could have destroyed.
But you're talking about the 5 years he served, not what you have.
I'm thinking there is something to show in 5 years.
So,
Mr.
But what I'm trying to say,
I'm saying there is something to show in his 5 years than you can show in your 40.
No, you're comparing uncomparables. The type of democracy we practice and those neighbors of ours are not the same.
Of course.
Here, you move 8 steps ahead, then Ochen pulls you 5 behind. Then Musisi takes 3 behind. So you are not moving.
But
and when you say,
an advantage of everything that happened.
When you say, let us have strict laws, for instance, Tanzania are referring to, if they want to build the road, the government puts a road in the pass anywhere. Do you know how much money here is required to build the road because of the compensation? So we are comparing, these are different systems. But the issue, like for instance, this evening, I was listening to a clash between Mao of DP and Chagulanyi of NUP. And these are people who are saying they want to remove Museveni and NRM, but they cannot see eye to eye. I was happy Mr. Musisi said that Mpuga left with his people, and I think he's comfortable with them leaving. That's why I think.
What are you quoting?
I think President Museveni is lucky.
An opinion and a quotation.
President Museveni is lucky that for him, he does not take the departure of an individual for granted. He's sort of searching. He may refuse, but at least he tries.
Okay.
So to me, the majority of the voters in this country, political parties have let them down. May I want to appeal to those who are watching us and those who are here. let us have a civic mind to understand that we are in a political campaign. Even if it is internal, don't fight to the extent of tearing each other. Because after elections, Uganda is here for us all.
All right, gentlemen.
So radicalization of our supporters, it's an issue that we need to check on. And two, which I want also to inform you from the government side, during campaign, the government does not go to sleep. It remains working. Therefore, you should go on your campaigns peacefully, well knowing that the state of Uganda is alive and will not allow lawlessness.
Okay, in the interest of time, gentlemen, I'm going to give you opportunity to make your concluding remarks. Let me begin with you, Mr. George Musisi.
Well, as Mr. Bamwine made his comments like he usually makes when he's at National Leadership Institute, the NRM political school in Changwanza. I don't think there's anyone who advocates for lawlessness. What we advocate for actually is the principle, the key tenet of rule of law is that everyone should be treated equally. That's what we advocate for. Let the law operate equally to all people. This business of, we have recurring issues since 2001 elections, and most of the pressing issues have been involvement of security agencies in elections, and we are not talking about them providing security, we're talking about them being involved to the extent of trying to determine the election. That is the involvement we're talking about. Because when you talk about involvement, Fred would say that no, you twist it to say that no, the government doesn't sleep. We're saying let the security agencies play the role they're supposed to play, not to act as an armed wing of one of the participants. We are talking about the Electoral Commission, who is supposed to be the arbiter, the manager of the election, to play its key role. Under our laws, the Electoral Commission is envisaged to even resolve many of the disputes in the course of the election, before you, such that you, if they make a decision against you, can appeal that decision to NUP has made several petitions to the Electoral Commission regarding some of the nominations that have happened, which have not been determined. So the issue is, if we are talking about elections, if our laws envisage an election, is this an election that they envisage? Of course, another person will say that you are deluded to imagine that you can even have an election in such an environment, which is sad.
Mr. Joseph Ochieno.
Just unfortunately, I'll conclude by right to reply. And I really didn't know that I would be here to end up taking either defensive or offensive posture. Certainly not particularly as a candidate to Ochieno. But look, Fred seems to talk things that were 40 years of NRM propaganda about what they found in 1986. Normally, the essential commodity item they talk about are things that happened in the short period of Idi Amin, when we fought Idi Amin, including with Mr. Museveni, all of us were on the same side. The absence of essential commodity is something that happened in 1980, and I was there. You know, Ministry for Supplies was created in order to fill the gap. In fact, it was filled within 18 months. You know, Ministry for Rehabilitation was done, so delivered to rehabilitate, and that's a basic literary word. And we delivered. We delivered, and everything else turned around the economy. But look at the context. At independence, only 12% of our GDP was controlled by indigenous African Ugandans. Uganda People's Congress made sure that within 3 years, by 9th October 1965, that figure had gone to 35%, meaning 25%, you know, growth in Africans' emancipation in this. Look at the infrastructure programs across this country, including building bridges, railways, and trains that these guys killed, I said at the beginning. You can't relate that to the figures that my brother is talking about here. Look at the fact that we opened up secondary schools across the country, in every then district that exists across the country in the short time of 8 years. Which one did this one do? You go to Makerere University, different kind of halls of residence, including my Michu, Mary Stuart, and Lumumba, plus national agricultural colleges, including farm institutes, every district that existed at the time. Building 22 hospitals in 8 years. To today's per capita, for the economists, that may be. That's nearly 148 or thereabout hospitals in that period of time. These guys have been around for the last 40 years. Loboa here is being given to a dubious woman whom we should actually either arrest or investigate. this is really not the damning indictment that we're talking about. This guy sold our public institutions, including public houses, including Crescent Towers, including the banks that we found in a short time. I don't really want to go into, because it has been said it has got to be given as a right to reply. But going forward, I hope, Patrick, that I get this matters resolved in court over the next few days, and that I get nominated. And the very likely event that that happens, I hope the National Electoral Commission will play its part. They've assured us that they don't break the law, and I'm quite confident that the challenges that we're putting pressure on the judicial system, unfortunately for the more recent judge who's handling my case, very recent, very decent lady justice, that this matter will be resolved. But in the event that that is done, that I hope that we shall have an election campaign in which we campaign on issues. We hope that candidates will not be nominated barefooted, and we hope that the election outcomes will be one which is not only free, fair, credible and verifiable, but one in which whoever wins the elections wins on behalf of all the citizens of this country, and that the vast majority of the young citizens in this country, while looking at candidates for presidents, candidates for parliaments, and candidates for local councils, they should look at issues rather than personalities. I think it's possible for that to happen. It is possible that beyond this, we should be looking at a transition beyond Mr. Museveni, and a situation in which all of us gather together. And that's why I really find it a little bit disappointing that sometimes some of our colleagues want to make political capital at critical moments, and that we recognize that beyond Mr. Museveni, there's Uganda in the future, and that Uganda is one in which we live together in a accommodative way. NRA subject this country to crude war even after 1986. You know, that is something of the past. Today, we want to make sure that the young Ugandans enjoy peace, stability, and prosperity, and the likes of the Chinese children doing, rather than comparing us with Rwanda.
Thank you, Mr. Chano. Mr. Fred Bamwine, your concluding remark.
Three things. One, I want to appeal to all political actors, those who are individuals and institutions like political parties, to know that you are representing the larger Uganda. Therefore, whatever you think, whatever you do, make sure you preserve a country called Uganda for all Ugandans. Two, the voters. Look at the messages of all various candidates. Pick that political party, that individual who has superior ideas that can push Uganda from here and take it ahead. Lastly, let us all be responsible as a country, whether as voters or as candidates, anybody who is around, play our roles responsibly, because after elections we need a united country.
I want to thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Fred Bamwine, Commissioner, Office of the President, I thank you. Mr. Joseph Ochieng, you are an aspirant for the presidency. I thank you. Mr. George Musisi, MP aspirant for Kira Municipality and member of National Unity Platform, I thank you. But most of all, you at home or wherever you are, I want to thank you for the privilege of your company. Good night, and God bless you, Uganda.
I would say